In the quiet village of Amaudara, there lived a young girl named Eve. She was 18 years old and the only daughter of her parents. She was known throughout the village for her beauty, grace, and charm. But there was one thing that made her different from others: she was blind. Despite her condition, Eve's radiant spirit shone through. Her parents, desperate to help their beloved daughter, tried everything. They sought help from various hospitals, consulted renowned healers, and even turned to traditional herbs, hoping for a miracle. But no matter what they did, Eve's blindness remained unchanged. Eventually, in their helplessness, they accepted her condition and made the difficult decision to train her to live independently, embracing the life she had been given. Mr. Obinna, Eve's father, was a respected farmer in their village. Known for his unyielding strength and dedication, he could spend 24 hours working across various farmlands without ever tiring. The hardships of his family only fueled his determination to work harder. After all, there was no one else to help him, except for his wife, Mrs. Uloma, whenever she had the time. Mrs. Uloma, a talented seamstress, would leave for work every day, leaving Eve at home. She believed that, given Eve's blindness, there was little she could do to contribute. But there was something truly extraordinary about Eve. Though she could not see, her voice possessed a rare and magical quality. Each morning, as the sun began to rise, Eve would sing softly to herself, her voice carrying a healing power that restored hope and brought a sense of peace to anyone who heard it. It was a gift that transcended her blindness, a reminder that even in the darkest of circumstances, there is beauty and light. Because of her beautiful voice, Eve was frequently invited to traditional ceremonies, weddings, and any gatherings that involved celebration and merriment. Her talent quickly earned her admiration from all corners, both the rich and the poor. Everyone was drawn to her voice, captivated by its ability to heal and bring joy. Eve, though often at home, used these opportunities to support her family. She would bring home money from her performances, and with pride, she would hand it to her father. "Now I am not useless," she would say with a smile, handing her dad the money she earned. Yet, deep down, whenever she was reminded of her blindness, her smile would fade, and the joy in her heart would turn to sorrow. One morning, as Eve sat quietly by herself, she turned to her mother, who was busy cutting cassava. With a soft voice, she muttered, "Does this mean I will be blind forever?" The question hung in the air, filled with the uncertainty and longing of a girl who dreamed of nothing more than to see the world she could only hear. Mrs. Uloma paused her work, placing a gentle hand on Eve's shoulder. "My daughter," she said, her voice filled with warmth and reassurance, "you will see again. God will surely restore your sight at the right time. We've visited so many places, and we're still searching for the best solution for you. But don't worry, my dear, your parents are here with you, supporting you every step of the way." One evening, as Eve sat at home, waiting for her parents to return from the farm as they did every weekend, there was a knock at the door. A man had come with devastating news. He told Eve that her parents had slipped in the market and died instantly. The words struck Eve like a thunderclap, and for a moment, she was speechless. Her heart shattered, and uncontrollable tears began to roll down her cheeks. She cried endlessly, unable to comprehend the weight of her loss. The man, seeing her grief, offered comfort and gently explained that since there was no one left to care for her, he would take her to her uncle's house. Reluctantly, she agreed, feeling lost and alone. It was there, in her uncle's home, that Eve's suffering grew worse. What she had feared most, being alone, became her harsh reality. Mr. Jacobs was not only known for his cruelty, but he also forcefully took lands from the villagers, instilling fear in everyone around him. He was a man feared by all, and the villagers kept their distance from him. His wife, Mrs. Ugoma, was no better. She was just as wicked, her heart as cold as her husband's, and together they created an environment of fear and oppression. Their two sons, Emeka and Obi, were notorious for their wayward behavior. They were wild and unruly, reflecting the harshness and lack of compassion in their upbringing. What else could one expect from such wicked parents, except for the raising of children who mirrored their own cruelty and misdeeds? If they weren't caught stealing, they were fighting. If they weren't fighting, they were with girls engaging in unspeakable acts. Their behavior was not only destructive but vile. They would taunt the elderly, insult them, and even throw water on their heads as they passed by. They were the bad eggs of society, their actions always leaving a trail of pain and shame behind them. And because of their family's wealth and influence, they always managed to escape the consequences. Money could buy silence, and it could cover up their disgrace. Since Eve was blind, Mrs. Ugoma would always send her on errands, seeing her as little more than a burden. "I know you're useless in this house, just like your useless parents, but you can't sit idly here," Mrs. Ugoma would snap, her voice sharp with disdain. "You must choose between fetching water or sweeping the whole compound and the rooms. I would have told you to cook, but with your blindness, you might burn the house down. And then, your people will start calling me wicked." Eve's heart sank as she listened to her aunt's cruel words. She could feel the weight of her helplessness pressing down on her. "Ma, you know I can't see," Eve replied softly, her voice trembling. "How am I supposed to find my way to the stream? Even if I choose to sweep, how will I know what to sweep?" Before she could finish, Mrs. Ugoma's hand struck her cheek, the force of the slap leaving her stunned. "Is this my house or yours?" Mrs. Ugoma's voice was livid. "Next time you. Anyways, I won't blame you. I blame your poor and cursed parents. Let me see if you can't do it. Unless I don't remember." The maltreatment Eve endured made her heart ache with sorrow every time she remembered her parents. She often found herself shedding tears, thinking, if my parents were still alive, I wouldn't be suffering like this. With no choice, chose to sweep for peace to reign. One early morning, she managed to pick a broom to sweep just to avoid any drama from her aunt. Eve's hands shook as she swept the dry earth of the compound. The morning sun burned her skin, but the heat was nothing compared to the fear crawling up her throat. One wrong move, and Aunt Ugoma would find another reason to punish her. Then, crash, her foot hit something solid. The sound of breaking clay made her stomach drop. Uncle Udo's palm wine jar. Silence. Then, "Stupid, useless girl," Aunt Ugoma's voice screeched across the yard. Before Eve could react, a hand grabbed her hair and yanked her down onto the shattered pieces. "Pick them up," Ugoma hissed. "Every last one." Shards bit into Eve's fingers. Blood smeared the dirt. Somewhere behind her, Emeka and Obi laughed. "Maybe we should tie a bell around her neck," Emeka sneered. Like a goat. Eve clenched her jaw, refusing to let them see her cry. The suffering continues. One morning, as usual, Eve began to sing softly to herself. Her voice, though filled with pain, carried the healing quality that had once brought peace to those who heard it. But Mrs. Uloma overheard her. Enraged, she stormed over and gave Eve a harsh warning. "You are a witch. You are blind, and you've killed your parents with your evil ways," Mrs. Ugoma shouted. "Do you think you can bring harm to my husband and my sons too? You will never succeed in this house." Her voice trembled with fury as she continued, "If I hear that song again, I won't just punish you, I'll send you back to your father's house. I don't care if you are blind or not. You will obey me." Mrs. Ugoma stormed out of the room, leaving Eve alone in her sorrow. The silence that followed was deafening, and Eve couldn't hold back her tears. "Now, I can't even sing peacefully anymore," she whispered through her sobs. "God, when will this pain ever end?" Her heart ached with the weight of her suffering, longing for a day when the torment would finally cease. One night, as Mr. Obinna and his wife lay in bed, a sense of frustration filled the air. Mr. Obinna sighed heavily and turned to his wife. "I really need money for my business, but borrowing that much is too risky. I'm not ready to offer my house as collateral. I need to sell something to get the money." 10 million naira is a huge amount to borrow from anyone, and who would even lend me money when they all know me as a wicked man? Mrs. Ugoma, without missing a beat, responded coolly, "Are you thinking of what to sell when you have someone in this house?" Mr. Obinna looked at her, confused. "Who?" he asked. "Who else but Eve?" she replied, her voice cold. "She's useless and has no one to speak for her. Selling her would be the best option." Her husband's eyes lit up with a wicked grin. "Oh, thanks, my wife. I didn't even think of that helpless, hopeless girl. That's why I love you." They slept happily. The next day, Mr. Jacob, a billionaire CEO arrived with his car. Mr. Obinna greeted Mr. Jacobs with a wide smile and invited him to sit comfortably in the sitting room. The atmosphere was tense, yet Mr. Emeka's demeanor remained cheerful, eager to close the deal. "Where is the girl?" Mr. Jacobs asked, his voice cold and businesslike. "Eve." Mr. Obinna called out loudly, his voice echoing through the house. He then turned to his two sons, Emeka and Obi, who were sitting nearby. "Go and bring that girl here." As the words reached Eve's ears, her heart sank, and she could feel the weight of her sorrow pressing down on her chest. Silent tears began to roll down her cheeks, each drop a reflection of the heartbreak she had carried for so long. "Is it because I'm blind?" The question hung in the air, fragile and full of pain, as she trembled in the corner of the house. Meanwhile, in Mr. Obinna's apartment, Eve sat alone on her bed, her sobs filling the quiet room. Her tears fell relentlessly, each one a symbol of the anguish in her heart. To anyone who might have heard, her crying might have seemed soft, almost melodic. But for those who listened closely, the brokenness beneath it was undeniable, the raw, unfiltered pain of a soul shattered by grief. "Why this pain?" she whispered to the empty room. "Why this cruelty? Why am I always alone?" Even surrounded by wealth, Eve felt an emptiness that gnawed at her very core. "Now I understand why my mother would always say," she thought, "a peaceful home is better than riches." She slowly stood, her body swaying as though the weight of her sorrow might pull her back to the ground. Her face, stained with tears, reflected the depth of her despair. Eve's chest tightened, suffocating under the realization of her fate. "So, Uncle Obinna really wants to sell me," she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. "What have I done to deserve this torture? What a cruel world." She recalled her uncle's harsh words, "She can't see. She's of no use. Who would care for her?" The thought echoed in her mind, but the answer seemed as distant as the hope she once held. So all this care was for a purpose? She thought bitterly. "Now I know. She brought me here for something." Her uncle's cruel indifference to her suffering, paired with his wife Mrs. Ugoma's heartlessness, made her feel even more alone. The sons, Emeka and Obi, only added to the fear she already felt. They were always there, watching her with their malicious eyes, waiting for the next opportunity to inflict pain. "Daddy, she is here," Emeka called out from the doorway, snapping Eve from her thoughts. The sound of her name being called in such a cold, distant way made her stomach churn. The cruel reality she had feared was now unfolding before her. Eve, too, was being dragged into a fate she had never chosen. "Go with her. She is perfect for the job," Mr. Obinna said to Mr. Jacobs, his tone final, as if Eve was nothing more than a mere object to be handed over. Eve stood frozen for a moment, her body trembling as the words sank in. There was no turning back now. She had no choice but to go with this man, this stranger who had just bought her like a commodity. With a heavy heart, Eve followed Mr. Jacobs, her feet dragging with each step. She knew the path ahead would be nothing like the life she had known. She didn't understand what lay in store for her, but she had no one left to fight for her. No one to protect her. The journey to Mr. Jacobs' home was long and silent. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, and Eve's heart felt heavy as they drove through unfamiliar roads. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the land, but all she could see was darkness. The one thing she had always feared had come true, her blindness had trapped her in a world of shadows and uncertainty. When they finally arrived at Mr. Jacobs' mansion, Eve's breath caught in her throat. The house was vast, grand, and imposing, far beyond anything she had ever imagined. It stood like a fortress, a stark contrast to the simple life she had once known in Amaudara. She stood there for a moment, unable to take it all in, her mind reeling from the enormity of it all. But when she stepped inside, something unexpected happened. The warmth and comfort of the place filled her with a strange sense of peace. It wasn't the opulence or the size of the house, it was the quiet, the calm that surrounded her. Mr. Jacobs led her through the halls, and Eve couldn't help but notice how different everything felt. There was no cruelty here, no harsh words or taunts, just a strange silence that seemed to embrace her. For the first time in what felt like forever, Eve felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this place would offer her the peace she had longed for. As days passed, Eve settled into the mansion, learning its rhythms and routines. Mr. Jacobs, though cold and distant, never treated her with the cruelty she had endured back at her uncle's house. There were no harsh commands, no disdainful looks from his family. Instead, he left her to her own devices, allowing her to focus on the one thing that still brought her comfort, her singing. One afternoon, as Eve sat in the grand living room, her voice filled the empty space, soaring through the halls with a purity and clarity that could melt even the coldest of hearts. It was then that Mr. Jacobs, hearing her for the first time, entered the room. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in the way he watched her, something different. Eve's voice was the same as it had always been, a healing balm, a song of hope, but in this place, in this mansion, it felt different. She felt different. "I didn't know you had such a gift," Mr. Jacobs said quietly, his voice devoid of the usual coldness she had come to expect from him. Eve stopped singing and looked at him, a little surprised. "I've always had it," she replied softly, her eyes meeting his for the first time. Mr. Jacobs regarded her for a moment before speaking again. "Perhaps there's more to you than I realized." In the weeks that followed, Eve's life began to shift in unexpected ways. Mr. Jacobs never spoke of the deal that had brought her here, but Eve noticed the subtle changes in how he treated her. She wasn't a prisoner in his mansion, nor was she a mere possession. She was allowed to pursue her music, to sing as much as she wanted, to be herself in ways she had never been allowed before. For the first time, Eve felt free. In her uncle's house, she had been nothing more than a burden, a blind girl with no value. But in Mr. Jacobs' mansion, her gift was recognized and appreciated. She was treated with respect, her talents nurtured, and slowly, she began to see that the life she feared might have been the very thing that set her on a path toward a better future. As the days went by, Eve realized something that had once seemed impossible. Being sold to Mr. Jacobs had, in a strange way, been the best thing her uncle ever did for her. It had freed her from a life of cruelty and hardship, offering her a chance to live, to sing, and to be someone in a world that had once been so unkind.